You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
He asked me to talk to you about
We'll call the meeting to order.
another.
Excuse me. Ms. Kessler, are you present?
Yes, I am.
Welcome. Ask everyone
you.
to stand for a moment of reflection, please.
Seat on the board here. And I talked to you about your other friend.
Thank you. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We've had an agenda published. Ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as published.
So moved.
Thank you, Reverend Newbill. Second from Mr. Cumber. All in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Pass. Agenda is adopted. Mr. McElroy, safety briefing.
Safety is a core value of JEA, and we begin each meeting throughout the utility with a safety briefing. In the event of an emergency, Mr. Ted Hobson will call security and 911. Mr. Vrost will help out with CPR. In the event that we need to evacuate the building for one reason, we will ask you to take care of your neighbor, make sure that we exit. I didn't get to the point about turning off your cell phone. It's coming.
Thank you, Reverend.
Oh, yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that.
In the event we do have to evacuate, we will evacuate using the stairs to the left of the elevators as you came in. We'll go down 19 flights of stairs in an orderly fashion, holding the handrail for safety. We'll exit onto the plaza level and proceed to the open parking lot on the southeast corner of Main and Church Street. I would encourage everyone to be absolutely safe and use the traffic signals in crossing Main Street should we need to leave. And everyone that's got a cell phone, please put it on silent at the moment, and that's our safety brief.
Thank you, Mr. McElroy. Ms. Brooks, the Sunshine Law Statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a duly public noticed meeting that has been published properly. Minutes will be taken. There is quorum present in the room, and we have Ms. Kessler on the telephone. So we're in good shape to proceed.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brooks. Now we'll move on to part 2 of our agenda and ask for comments from the public. Chair would recognize Ms. Diane Royal. You'll step to the microphone and give us your name and address, please.
My name is Diane Royal. My address is 3009 Jolly Road, 32207. I came here 2 months ago to express my concern about the smart meter that had been installed on my property without any advance notice or asking of how I felt about it or anything. And I was told after the comments that you would take it under consideration. And I was told by JEA after I complained initially that they had a list, they were keeping a list of people who weren't happy with the smart meters until they figured out what they were going to do about it. And I still have not been contacted, so I'm presuming that nothing has been decided about what you're going to do about it. And I presented a study that showed the harm that they can cause, and I was told that everybody else is putting them in, and so they must be safe, or something to that effect. And so I came today to request either that you all publicly publish a statement that or a study that shows that these things are safe, or else do what many other municipalities are doing and make provisions for people to opt out if they have a problem with them. There are people that have serious health issues with those smart meters, and I think it's very unkind and unprofessional for you to just install them in everyone's houses without even asking, and then not allow any way that people can opt out, even if they have serious health issues. And I came today to find out when you might take some action on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Royal. Mr. McElroy?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we continue to look at this issue from the utilities perspective. We believe now there are in excess or close to 50 million smart meters installed in the U.S. and many, many more around the globe. From a utility perspective, health and safety of our customers is of the utmost concern, and goals and objectives that we follow very closely. We have not and do have the scientific studies as attested by the 50-plus million meters installed that don't pose a health effect to our customers. That said, we continue to look at a range of opportunities. We have an option which it runs in the tune of several $1,000s. We think that's way too high. There are some that are we're looking at that are several $100s, and we'll be making the decision in the next 60 days.
What, is that
Thank
an
you, Ms. Rowe.
option for people that want to opt out that you're considering?
Well, we would provide you with another electronic or digital meter, and there is a significant cost to the utility to do that, and that would be borne by the customer, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Royal. Have to take the next comment now. Chair would recognize Scott Kennelly. Comments about smart meters and water quality. Mr. Kennelly, good to see you. How are you?
Thanks for allowing us to speak. I'll echo her sentiments with regard to the smart meters. That was something that I've spoken with JEA quite a bit about. October 2015, I was diagnosed with leukemia, fought that for a year, and luckily I'm on the other side of it. But we've been looking at, in our home, how to reduce potential environmental toxins and EMF, CMRs. So we certainly would like an option, willing to pay for it. We've told JEA that. Looking forward to JEA responding in 60 days with those options. This is what it sounds like y'all are working toward. I would urge JEA to offer an analog option in addition to simply a different digital meter. But to kind of go along the same path that she's already talked about smart meters and you've already responded, certainly if you have anything to add with regard to analog, I'd appreciate it. But with regard to the water quality, there's been reports recently that Jacksonville is fairly low in terms of water quality, regardless of whether it meets federal regulations. It seems like something that JEA should be looking at, and I'm sure you have. I would like to know what can be done to improve our water quality, even much higher than the federal minimum standards. It would be great if Jacksonville was seen as a city with good water quality, like New York City is seen, and they certainly have their share of old pipes and a lot of space to cover like Jacksonville does. So I would like to know what JEA has done to look at improving our water quality, and I'll ask for your response. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you being here today. I hope you stick around. Brian Roche will actually be speaking later in our meeting. Brian is the Vice President of JEA's Water Systems, and he'll be addressing not only our water sustainability, but he'll also touch on the safety issues, which I won't call fake news, but others might.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments from the public? That's all I've got. Then we'll turn to our council liaison, the Honorable Matt Schellenberg. Matt?
I'm good. Thank you very much for inviting me again. I always enjoy it. But I did want to thank the staff for coming in and informing me about what they're going to present on Friday morning in the budget hearing. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Councilman Schellenberg. And then Dr. Gaffney from the Office of the Mayor. Dr. Gaffney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing today other than, as always, the mayor says this, and his greetings that he appreciates what we do, all the great work we do, and to also not to forget that employees do a great job as well. And that you all know we appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Gaffney. Tell the mayor we said hello too. No one here from Nassau County. Then I'd call on Carrie Stewart to present the 2017 J.D. Power final electric residential results. Ms. Stewart.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Board. I am pleased to be here with you today to present the J.D. Power Residential Survey 2017 final reports. You may remember at last month's meeting, Mr. McElroy shared with you that we had received preliminary results and that we found out that we did finish back in the first quartile again for 2017. I'm going to provide a summary. Any board member that would like more details, you certainly are, we can get that to you. The first chart that we're going to look at shows where we've come from and where we are today. From 2012 to 2017, you can see each year we've made incremental and sometimes a great deal of growth in terms of our overall customer satisfaction index scores. The rows across the columns show you where we landed in terms of quartile versus the industry. The second row shows where we rank nationally versus our peers in the industry that participate in J.D. Power. And the final row shows where we rank in Florida against our peers, again, that participate in the J.D. Power study. The next slide, to the far right or the left of the slide, is a restatement of our overall customer satisfaction index. The charts to the right of that break it down into the 6 individual drivers that make up our overall customer satisfaction score. I'm going to go into each of these drivers. Again, just as an overview, to the right of the slide for power quality and reliability, you'll see the weights of the attributes that make up the score for power quality and reliability. Obviously, the most heavily weighted attribute is that the utility supplies electricity during extreme temperatures. But coming in tied at second is promptly restoring power after an outage. This means a lot in terms of customer satisfaction, and the accompanying chart shows the importance of actual restoration time to the estimated restoration time. If a customer expects us to return power to their home at a certain time, they would like it to be done at that time. We scored a 736 on this driver. We're pretty proud of that. Price, always a tricky one. As you can see, the heaviest weighted attribute is the total monthly cost of electric service. Our most recent report of average bill for a JEA customer puts us at about $173 a month. But the total cost of the electric service is not the only driver or the only attribute, as you can see. There are other pieces that weight that, and what the chart demonstrates is the slight downward pressure on customer satisfaction if the customer sees no other value than just the basic services. Again, JEA scored a 679 on price. Billing and payments driver. This is the highest scored individual driver that we have. You can see that it has relatively evenly distributed attributes in terms of the weighting. Ease of paying a bill, amount of time given to pay a bill, and the variety of methods to pay a bill all weigh pretty much equally into this driver. The chart to the left shows payment and billing trends. Again, by far and away, our customers prefer to pay their bills with a direct transfer from their savings or checking account. You'll see a slight uptick in the credit and debit payments, which we correlate directly to our reducing our fees per transaction for debit and credit cards. Again, JEA scored an 807. This is the highest score for an individual driver, and I am going to talk a little bit more specifically about billing and payments at the end of this presentation.
I have a quick question. What is other? Seems like cash, money order, check, transfer, and debit cards cover the universe.
I was going to say Bitcoin. Thank you, Mr. Cumber.
Is that true?
No, that is not true.
Totally gullible.
A good try.
Prepaid credit cards, things like that, just sort of non-traditional
Okay.
methods of payment.
Thank you.
Corporate citizenship. This isn't heavily weighted overall in customer satisfaction, but it is a key piece that we have focused on, and I think the chart to the left shows that. 39% of our customers are aware of our efforts to improve our impact on the environment, much higher than the industry standard. Again, JEA scored 685 on this driver. We talked a lot about communications at last month's meeting, so I won't belabor that, but you can see that, again, we continue to increase in this score. JEA scores a 712 on this individual driver, and just like last month, you may remember these two charts. The fact that our customers recall direct communication from us as well as media discussions about us is much higher than the industry standard. And again, if you remember, those were positive recollections, which was a nice surprise from last month's presentation. 712 is what we scored in communications. The next two slides actually combine to make up the customer service score, and that's our call center and then our web presence, or JEA.com. The call center portion of this, you can see it has a lot of attributes, but by far the most heavily weighted on this, and you'll see on the website as well, is the timeliness of resolving a problem, question, or request. We focus a lot on first call resolution in our call centers, and I think that shows in the chart to the left. 70% of the calls that come into our call center are resolved in that first call. And again, between the call center and the web, we scored an 800. Online driver, or JEA.com, only 4 attributes, but again, the most heavily weighted is the timeliness of doing business with JEA, whatever it is the customer needs to do. This is an interesting chart that we didn't have in the communications presentation last week, but it shows that a full 72% of our customers have set up an online account. That doesn't mean they visit it every month, that doesn't mean they pay through it, but 72% of our customers have set up an online account with JEA.com. And you can see it's, again, far and away above the industry standard. Between the web and the call center, again, a score of 800, which is second of individual drivers. This next slide is the same information but broken down differently. At the top of the slide, what you'll see are the 6 individual drivers, our current score, and how many points we improved year over year. The top right slide shows our overall score, again, a 747, and how far we came from last year. And then the green arrow, 21 nationally. We finished 21st nationally out of 138 peer utilities across the country. The chart in the middle bottom shows where each of the drivers scored in terms of quartile. So each of the 6 drivers, we finished in the first quartile with the exception of price. But we're danger close to that first quartile in that one. And this one, you maybe can't see it from the audience, but I think you have it in your handouts. This is a list of all 138 peer companies that we are ranked among. I thought you might find this interesting, and again, to the far left of the slide is JEA finishing at 21st, first quartile with a score of 747.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Anyone have any questions regarding the J.D. Power Mr. Cumber?
Just one. Can you go back to slide 6 for a second? I'm just curious. I would assume that from a utility standpoint, savings and checking account transfers are the most preferential compared to check, cash, credit card, debit cards. And I'm curious, over a year, what's trended these savings and checking account transfers to drop by 15%? If we have any insight into that, and how do we get that back up to, a higher percentage again?
Well, what you will see is an almost equal
For the
uptick
credit
in the
cards.
credit and debit cards. A lot of people use credit cards for points, but our fee associated with that transaction was a deterrent to people using their credit or debit cards. And when we lowered the fee, we saw almost a direct correlation between
Okay.
the two. And if you
So
look
we
at,
took a fee away from credit card use?
we lowered the fee.
Lowered the fee?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
Good question. Others? Mr. Petwick,
I'd like to ask Ms. Stewart to confirm something for me.
please.
Ms. Stewart, am I looking at the list correctly when I see only one other Florida power company in the top 21?
No, there's
There's Clay and FP&L.
in Gulf,
Gulf Power.
Or Gulf Valley.
and I think Seco is.
Seco? Yeah, Seco is that the number 1 ranked?
Yeah, I think that's a.
And who is that?
A co-op in Seminole County Co-op, small.
Well, that shouldn't count. So that's small.
I agree.
Yeah.
We throw them out?
Get them out. Clay, too.
Okay, so Seco is a Florida, okay,
Which one is that?
thank you, ma'am.
And Mr. Petway, I can get you a list of the Florida only and where we
That's all
rank.
right, that's fine.
It's on your
Some of
first
those
one.
names, I just want to make sure they weren't hiding from us.
Any others? Revenue Bill, Kelly? Ms. Kessler, do you have any questions?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. I think you're still on the clock, Ms. Stewart. Report on JEA billing and collections.
As we stated in the results from the J.D. Power rankings, billing and payment was our highest individual scoring driver. So I want to talk just very briefly about our billing and collections process and show you the array of payment options that we make available to our customers, as well as extension options and methods to pay. This is pretty self-explanatory. The JEA customers, as you know, pay based on energy and water that they've already consumed. The bill is typically generated 30 days after services are consumed. We won't disconnect or warn to disconnect after the first missed payment. The account must be in arrears for older than 40 days before disconnection may be scheduled. And how do we alert customers when their bill is past due? On the 31st day, they get a disconnection warning notice in their actual bill. So this would have been a 61-day consumption bill, thereabouts. 6 days later, they would receive a disconnection warning notice via mail. And then 5 days later, they would receive a disconnection warning notice by phone. I do want to make a point to note that we don't disconnect on weekends, but we will reconnect on weekends if someone makes a payment on a Friday. Payment extension options. What does a customer do if they find themselves in arrears? Payment plans are great options for folks that just need a couple of extra days to pay their bill. And they're granted on the basis of the customer's payment history and a couple of other factors. They can apply for an extension online at JEA.com or by phone calling our customer care center. We have about 18,000 folks on payment plans currently. As for payment arrangements, sometimes customers need a little more than a couple of days extra to pay their bill. So we can make payment arrangements that provide a means for customers to pay their outstanding bill or balance through monthly installments. The duration of the payment arrangement typically ranges between 3 and 6 months, and the customer must pay a little bit of their arrears before we will allow them into this program. We currently have a little over 2,500 customers on payment arrangement plans. And you can see on the slide, we consider several factors before granting a payment extension. And again, a lot of this is self-service. You can go into the JEA.com system or call customer care, and this can happen pretty quickly. So if you aren't in arrears, but you want to proactively manage your account, we have a couple of programs that are really popular with our customers. JEA My Budget is a leveled billing option that allows customers who are interested in payment stability without receiving a true-up bill at the end of the year. They select this billing plan and they pay about the same amount to JEA each month, and that minimizes the seasonal weather patterns that causes spikes in their bill in the summer and potentially in the winter. We have almost 21,000 customers on JEA My Budget. JEA My Way is a pay-as-you-go service. It provides customers added control over their energy usage. It is prepay. It's convenient and flexible and provides the customer the opportunity to spend less on their utility services. What we know since this program has been here at JEA is that customers do consume and spend less on their utility bills simply because they have awareness of their water and electric usage. We have a little over 17,000 customers on JEA's My Way. We also provide bill alerts and reminders to customers who opt in or enroll into these programs for text or emails about their usage. Once it's reached a certain amount, they get an update. When the bill is ready to be viewed online, when the bill due date is a few days away, when a payment has been received. A lot of customers call in just to make sure that their payment has been received. It gives them great comfort to get a text or an email without them having to call to let them know their payment has been posted. And then obviously the service disconnection notice. They can, in addition to getting the bill, the mail, and the phone call, they could also sign up to receive an email or a text from JEA. The final slide shows how we compare to other Florida utilities. Again, by far and away, JEA's bill due period and then our grace period extended on top of that at right around 43 days shows us that along with our array of payment options, our extension options, and our ways to pay, all of these factors contribute to that 807 score for that individual driver for billing and payments. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Questions regarding bill payment collections? Mr. Cumber? Ms. Flanagan?
Just one. In terms of the payment arrangements, do we assess interest on outstanding bills that are timed over the extended 3 to 6 months?
Paul?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we do. There is an interest charge, and we also pay. Well, there's a late charge, and we also pay interest on deposits.
That was a question from the chair of our finance committee. Mr. Petway?
Yes.
Revenue bill.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. How does the average customer, let's say I come from out of town and hook up with JEA, how do I know these options? When do I get the information?
When you start service, if you go to JEA.com or you call our call center or you walk in downstairs, you will be given this array of options.
Could you also comment on the neighbor-to-neighbor program for those customers who may not have the financial means to pay their bill?
Sure. We've been in discussion about that this week, actually. Our neighbor-to-neighbor program is a program that's established that allows customers to pay a little extra on their bill to go into a fund, like a GoFundMe account, that's managed by JEA and that helps our low-income customers with their bills. And we do also work very closely with social service agencies directly and through United Way to help our customers on that side of the scale.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just want to, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I want to commend your department because the people we need to look out for, you can look at this and see that they are it's very thoughtful, and so let me just commend you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Newbell.
I would echo Reverend Newbill's comments. JEA, by your last chart, is far and away the leader in Florida utilities in accommodating those ratepayers and customers that need a little extra time, need a little help. It's something we can all be proud of while still being good financial stewards. We go the extra mile, and that's something to be proud of. I'd also like to commend the entire electric system team, especially the team that supports residential electric services. You get to stand up here and take credit for it, Carrie, but there's a whole team behind you.
Yes, absolutely.
That moved JEA from 5 years ago at the very bottom of the J.D. Power rankings to the first quartile. So they deserve recognition and a round of applause.
Absolutely.
Ms. Kessler, I neglected to ask if you had any questions for Ms. Stewart before we excuse her.
No, thank you, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda under item 3A. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Ms. Flanagan. Is there a second? Reverend Newbill, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. We'll move on to 3B, strategic discussion, and I'll call on Mike Brose to talk about the Cedar Bay transmission service conversion. Mr. Brose?
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. My item today involves an amendment to a 1990 agreement between JEA and a company called AES Cedar Bay for interconnection and transmission service. Cedar Bay was a coal-fired 300 megawatt cogenerator. So they're located in Jacksonville, right up off of Heckscher Drive, about halfway between the zoo and the Dames Point Bridge. You can still see the stack. The unit was recently shut down, but you can see the stack from downtown. So as a cogenerator, they sold steam to a paper mill, West Rock, and they sold electricity to Florida Power and Light, 260 megawatts capacity and energy in a 30-year PPA that was set to terminate in 2024. JEA's involvement, since this plant was built in our service territory, was to enter into the, again, back in 1990, an interconnection agreement to bring the generator into the electric system and then to wheel the power to an FPL substation. We, our agreement was also a 30-year agreement, so it was set to terminate in 2024. In 1997, we put in place a FERC approved open access transmission tariff. Our transmission tariff previously had been different. FERC, as you probably know, is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and we put in a new tariff. Our OATT allows grandfathering in of previous agreements. So this Cedar Bay agreement was grandfathered and continued on as is with, again, JEA providing the interconnection and the wheeling. 2015, FPL bought out of the agreement about 10 years early and proceeded to shut down the unit and is in the process of dismantling it. And they worked that deal with the owner. Our transmission agreement continued. It's a separate agreement, and it's basically assigned now to Florida Power and Light. We are receiving $4.4 million annually under that agreement to provide the transmission service, even though the unit's no longer in service. So it's basically a stranded contract that FPL assumed when they bought out of the contract and shut it down. What they are asking us to do, and what staff has consented to do, and we've got a FERC attorney that we work with up in Washington, D.C., they're asking that we go ahead and convert the old agreement by amendment at this time to be consistent with our current pro forma OATT, our current transmission tariff. JEA is not affected by the change and is not impacted. It will allow FPL, the current agreement is strictly based on power flowing from Cedar Bay out of that facility to the FPL substation. Going under the OATT will allow FPL to do what's called a redirect, and they can change the point from that Cedar Bay location to another point on our system, or an interconnection to another utility like Georgia Power. So that's what's going on with this one. It does require a vote.
Okay, so let me just make sure I understand. The agreement we're seeking to terminate and move under the tariff is for transmission of electricity from a plant that's no longer generating?
Correct. We're actually not terminating it. We're amending it.
Okay, so we're getting something for nothing?
Yes.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
So no change in terms or price, though?
Right. Same price.
Is there a motion to approve amendment number 2 to the interconnection and transmission service agreement and authorize staff to execute the same for firm point-to-point transmission service with FPL?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Flanagan. I'll take that as a second from Mr. Petway. Any discussion, questions for Mr. Gross? Mr. Cumber?
Just one question. So, and just to follow up with the chairman, so FP&L will continue, because I assume that there was a original capital investment that we made for this, so the payments
Correct.
continue in order to cover that initial investment that we made.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what the 4.4 is covering.
Yep.
And we'll continue through, under the new OATT, it'll continue through the same time frame, 2024,
Okay.
at which
Great.
point it can be continued or terminated by either party.
Anything else? Ms. Flanagan? Mr. Petway?
Yeah, I have an unrelated question to the report, if I might.
Let's come back to that and conclude this discussion on the motion. Reverend Newbill? Any questions for Mr. Bros on the motion? Ms. Kessler?
No, thank you.
Okay, and having no other questions on this topic, I ask for a vote. All those in favor of approving amendment number 2 to that agreement, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Mr. Petway?
What's going to happen to the cooler?
Stack,
Yeah,
Cedar Bay?
yeah.
Well, unless somebody buys the asset and puts another power plant there, it'll come down. FPL's plan is to dismantle it.
Dismantle?
Yeah,
Right.
it's all coming down. And of course, the paper plant is still sitting there right next to it, operating, so no change for it.
West Rock.
West Rock, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bros. Appreciate it. Next, call on Brian Roche for that water supply sustainability plan report. Is Mr. Kennelly still here? Okay, listen up. Mr. Roche.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you, Board, for the opportunity to present JEA's Water Supply Sustainability Plan. This presentation discussion is for information discussion, and there's no direct board action asked today. It's really to set up a long-term discussions of this important subject. We have a comprehensive agenda, really four main topics, the water supply and quality. We'll go through 7, 8, 9 slides on that. Go through our consumptive use permit compliance that we do report on a monthly basis, an operating report, but we'll have more details today. We'll have kind of a summary where we're at, and there's supplemental that we won't go through as a presentation, but it's in your written documents as additional detail of some of the things we're covering today, if anyone has any questions or future information desire. So we'll start, really going to start from start to finish. Where does water come from? How does it get to our customers? Water quality, what we have done for compliance, and what we're doing long-term for our plans. So I think the first thing to start is our water source. It's the Florida aquifer. It's a pristine resource. We're very privileged to have it here in Northeast Florida. So if you start at the bottom of the graph, you take groundwater drawn from an aquifer. Typically, it's between 1,000 and 1,500 feet deep. We pull in the dark blue there, or royal blue, and you bring it up to the water treatment plants in the middle of the top green area. We produce and sell our customers about 115 million gallons a day of water. That adds up to about 37 billion gallons a year. So 115 goes into water treatment plants, goes out to our customers, business and homes. About 85 million gallons go back to our wastewater system every single day. 30 is used for irrigation, other uses that do not make it back into the water system. About 20 million gallons a day goes to reclaim, and then 65 million gallons a day goes into the river after it's treated to full compliance. The cycle on the top, rainfall replenishes the aquifer. It's good to have rainfall, maybe not as much as we've had the last 45 days, but you got to have the long-term rainfall. We are regulated by the St. Johns River Management District, SJR WMD, through a 20-year consumptive use permit. We call it CUP going forward. We'll abbreviate it, call it CUP. That became effective May 2011. It has 50 specific conditions that we managed to, and there's a lot of meat to that cup right here. I have it right there. There's a couple pieces of paper. There's a lot to it, and we work through that every day. The whole team does. The next slide shows after we get the water from the aquifer, how do we get to our customers? We have 137 wells, 37 plants where the well fields are distributed. It has tanks, treatment, which mostly aeration and chloride. We have 4,000 miles of piping, distribution, and transmission pipings throughout the system. Very large system, second largest in the state, one of the largest in the country. We have 2 major grids that are interconnected through 2 river crossings. We'll touch more detail on a future slide, and 4 independent grids. Not to get into too much detail, but if you look back 20 years ago when before JEA acquired the water sewer, there was 5 or 6 private utilities, probably 20, 25 grids around town. So we've interconnected for reliability. The major grids. You got small independent ones in Nassau County, Mayport, and 2 along the coast in the beach. And please, anytime, we got 18 slides to go through. Some are kind of a build slide, but any questions along the way, please feel free to ask Paul or I to accentuate on anything. With our customer coming to us today, we appreciate your feedback. Drinking water quality standards is our #1 priority, public safety. And we follow all environmental regulations. We start at the federal level, which is EPA, started the Safe Drinking Water Act in 1974. They have regulated or delegated that authority to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Any rules that Florida FDP has are either stringent or more stringent than the federal laws, and they take primacy in the sense of for regulatory requirements. There's 2 main administrative code chapters under the FDP. One, system operation requirements. And those, for example, is to maintain minimum pressures in a system of 20 psi. What happens if you have a pipe break? How you deal with boil waters? So those are more operation. Today, we're focusing more on the water quality. We do routine monitoring of our system. We have 45,000 samples a year done through our lab. Kevin Holbrook's not here in our Mike's area, but we showcase JEA's lab over at First and Main. Do a great job there. We publish all our details in the water quality report, the annual report. We got a little snapshot of that. It's on JEA.com. We look at things like chlorine residual, copper, lead, any other type of potential contaminant level is all reported there. We do know that the media had several weeks ago has reported on not just JEA, not just Jacksonville, across the country, potential contaminants of water supply. Want to just kind of assure everyone that it's across the country. There's a report out. We have seen this recurring report before in 2009. Jim was CEO at the time. In 2012 and 13, Paul and Jim worked on responses to that. So this is the same entity has reported on that I think our chairman commented on that, but we take everything, the utmost importance and through our compliance and our everyday, to not only meet federal and state standards, but to exceed them. Water and reclaim unit sales trends, really just want to focus on here where we were in FY07. We peaked at 43 billion gallons of sales to our customers on the water. And you see the magenta on that bar chart was pretty small reclaim, probably that's the right-hand axis, probably about 1 million gallons a day at that point in time. And then we went down through FY13-14, we were at 32 to 33 billion. So that's about a 25% reduction over that 7-8 year period. The key to our sales, and then we've kind of rebounded the last 3 years where we're up to about 37 billion gallons. So even looking where we are this year, we had a lot of dry periods, high sales, still 7 million, 14% below our peak that we had in 2007. The drivers of sales, of course, is growth, weather, economic conditions, and demand management. And demand management, we look at our conservation messaging, our expanded programs, demand-side management programs, we continue to work on that, pricing signals, and we put a kind of an inflection point at 2007, 2008. We all know what happened to the economy then in September 2008 and even the year before. And that was really a combination of, there was a lot of messaging at the time. That's why we ramped it up 4 or 5 months ago in the springtime. Economic turn down, we had combined utility bills were large, and people said, wait a minute, we're not going to waste as much water as society really did. Now, still room for improvement on usage, but there was a significant change at that point in time. The chart at the bottom has a couple red points showing where there's some peaks, where maybe 2006 or 7, average residential customers using 7,000 gallons a month. The last 2 years have been 5.2 thousand gallons a month, so a significant difference than we were 10 years ago. Rainfall in 2016, we were in a drought. It circled 31.4 inches. We average about 52 inches a year of rainfall. Seems like we probably, I think Paul's group we've got about 35 inches in the last 60 days, but we averaged 52, and we went through about 1.5 years of drought right before May 24th, and it doesn't seem like it stopped raining since then. Reclaimed water objectives. This is an essential component of a water supply plan. Started in 2000. JEA attained responsibility in June 1997. In 2000, we started with reclaim users. It started with bulk users such as golf courses, power plants, and UNF. And in 2006, we started selling to retail customers. What required about February 2014 or 2015, we had a board policy that said all new water connections of potable water. If you have a water connection in the South Grid area or also in Nassau and Duval, where we designate a reclaimed service area, knowing that we have the infrastructure, the transmission and capacity to serve our customers, if we're going to have a pipe there within 5 years, then you need to go ahead and build your housing development for reclaimed water. And that was a big change that helped. It was before it was a chicken and egg. If the reclaimed water wasn't right next to the neighborhood, maybe they'd say it's not time to deliver. So that's a big improvement we did in our system to rebuild or build out our reclaim system. We have looked at retrofitting existing neighborhoods. Very expensive at this point in time. It's not economically feasible. So, essential element. The total water management plan. Go ahead.
Can I just ask a
Yeah,
question?
please.
Of course.
So, with respect to this slide on the reclaimed water,
Yes.
I know we've had discussions in the past on, I believe it was the city that would provide waivers to developers from having to meet this. So I'm just curious where we are with that, because it's one thing that for us to have, this policy in place. It's another thing if the city continues to give developers waivers from having to meet this.
The last time that the Legislative Council provided a waiver was November 2012. And then we worked, it was either, I know Ray and Todd Mack are in here, we did it either February 2014, 2015, put this policy in. We've had no concerns since then.
Okay.
We did have some lawyers in between that period of time. We put the policy in, developer is fully on board. If you got a neighborhood that we got a pipe anywhere close to it, I think it's 700 feet, 1,200 feet, 200 houses, all is working smooth since then, that board.
So we feel like
that's been addressed.
everyone understands
Oh,
the
yes.
need to
And we
continue to comply with
engaged the
this.
St. John's River Management District, the developer engineering community, and said, try to show them the background here, we got to do this reclaim, and I think everyone bought into it.
Okay, great.
Thank you for your reminder of that. The Total Water Management Plan, I'm going to go ahead and call this our first generation of water supply plan at JEA. There's 3 key components of it. It was the conservation measures and price signals. We made some price adjustments in, I believe it was November 2015, to put on high users of residential. Then we had about adjustments for 8 years in a row at that point in time that really looked at conservation usage. So if you use higher amount of water, you have a higher tier each month. The reclaim system expansion, and then transfer raw water through 2 river crossings. And these pictures here show in 2004, we had the south from right kind of the Main Street Bridge over the River Oaks, Hendricks area, we had a river crossing of a large 30-inch diameter pipe. And then in 2012, we created the one going underneath kind of the Matthews Bridge area. And those 2 river crossings right now are transferring 14 million gallons a day from the Springfield Main Street plant over into this east side of town. And we have continued more wells, we'll show in the picture, to get up to about 23 or 24 million gallons a day. So that was a total water management plan. We're still executing it. It's gone on since 2002. We'll be done in about 5 years, that full build out. And we're working on our next generation. We'll talk about a water supply plan. Our next slide, we're really focused on our wells in condition 49 and 50. The 50 conditions kind of save the best or the toughest for the last. Number 49 and 50, we have wells of concern in the district. So look at these 3 wells in the red, Ridenhour, Oak Ridge, and Deerwood 3. Do water quality monitoring. Look for chlorides and sulfide levels to make sure that they go down and sustain at not increasing the amount of chlorides and sulfides to make sure those wells can last for decades and years, prevent saltwater intrusion. So we went on, embarked 3 or 4 years ago on a program looking at that, working with the district on that, engaging a consultant on that, and we're doing good. What we've done there is instead of pulling 2,000 or 2,500 gallons a minute out of a well, 1,500 feet deep, we might pull 1,500 gallons a minute out of it and have more wells with less in it and not go as deep, and maybe pull from 700 to 900 feet deep, and therefore you have less chlorides and less sulfides, everything's maintaining equilibrium. We look at cup condition 50, South grid allocations. That was probably the most tightest restriction we have in our consumptive use permit in the next 15 years. They came into effect with the second river crossing, and then when the 2014 Greenland water treatment went online, we'll have a couple slides to kind of walk us through that. And then the Iowa Water Program is really support the compliance of those conditions and look at specific wells. There's 84 of the 137 JEA wells that are impacted by this whole South grid allocation condition. Next slide kind of walks through a chronology of where we were in 1998. New wells and water treatment plant. I wouldn't really call it, was more of a just-in-time water sewer plan. We built 3 new plants at the point in time, and really just trying to keep up with the supply. The first river crossing, 2006 was the first retail customer. The cup negotiations started in 2007. Paul Steinbecker worked on it. Took 4 years to consolidate our cup. Before we had each individual plant had its own permit limitation. Now we consolidate them in 2011. It took 4 years, and we now have a 20-year cup, which we're 5 years into or 6 years into at this point in time. The second river crossing was a major milestone in 2014. 2016 to 2018, we continue to put new wells at Main Street, 10 MGD. We finished one last year. We're starting construction one right now. We have another one to start next year. We do know Highview, Renetta, Marshall's area is doing the construction as we speak. We drill wells. It'll take about a year. It's over there by the Kennedy Center on First and Iona area, the one currently right now. We do make some noise. Most of it's during daytime, 7 to 7, but we know we get permits to allow us, if something goes on, we need to keep the construction going on a couple of days a year at nighttime to save that construction job that we got permits. EQD across the street helped us with that in the neighborhood. And we reached out, looked at locations of the wells, so that's good news there. We got one more well to put in 2018 at that point in time. And then you look into our next generation of water supply plan. That's where we stand today, is to continue to execute what we have and develop the next one more comprehensive plan. And you work on, there's really 2 focuses. You got demand side, look at conservation, demand side programs. We're going to have and look at the supply side. And the supply has reclaim, total water management plant, the water purification, the one water that we'll talk about, potential third river crossing over by NAS, and intermediate aquifer, potentially pull from a different source in the aquifer. We're working on, Mike Hightower's group's working on a comprehensive communication plan in FY18 to help us on that. I'd be remiss for 30 seconds. This comprehensive plan is a comprehensive team. It's the whole company. Good bit of my team, about 10 of us over there. We've got HR, Carol Higley's Essential. We've got a couple of consultants working with High. We got public relations, environmental. This plan, 15, 20 years, is throughout, not just the building. Our consultants, our contractors, all depend on all of them to make sure we develop this plan and execute over the next 20 years. We'll go through a few slides on our substance use compliance. Every month in the board op report, we put 3/4 of the slide in, and real quick, just going clockwise, we look at our overall consumption, the red line, 117 million gallons a day. Our limit's 133, so we're fine underneath that as we speak. As each month goes on, the blue line has a bigger spread and margin underneath the red line. The second one is the summary data of the South Grill well field allocation limit. Year to date, we're at 50.17. Our limit, we need every decimal, is 50.23, so we're barely under it. Last year, we were at 52.95. There's operational flexibility in our permit allows a 20% operational flexibility for each well field. But we're trying to, you look at, not to use that operational flexibility until we really need to. The third ones are reclaimed, 20 MGD as we speak, and then one on the, at the end of the clockwise is really a monthly impacts of the slide above. It shows you that we have, like, when June rainfall happened, we had a lot less flow than we would have had in May before the rainfall. So it fluctuates each month. Oh, I hope the boss is okay with this one. We call this the Costco slide because Paul sketched this. You go to Costco, you buy the $1 pizza and the $1 one, and you got the umbrellas. I don't know why they have umbrellas inside there. And he sketched this up about 4 years ago, and this is going to last 20 years. And my folks came back with a little cryptic one and said, no, this is a piece of art, folks. It's going to last. So Paul sketched this out, and we live by it. It's a great slide. So we call it a Costco slide. Everyone knows what it is. Thank you, Paul, for laughing. All right? It was one of the best days of this job. It was like Monday morning, it's like, all right. So anyway, the next 4 slides build into this. I'll try to go a little bit quick on the time. This is the end product. So we got the beginning, where we're going to see the end, and we got 2 build slides going into it. And really, the summary here is the dark blue is the water comes from the wells in the South Grid, from wells that are located there. The medium blue is coming from Springfield plant and Main Street that's crossing over the river crossing. And the purple magenta is the reclaim. And the red line is the demand. And you want to make sure that red line never hits the white area. And we came pretty close in 2015 and 2016, and we started having more room as we go the next few years, and it gets a little bit tighter on the 20-year out. That white area has, if it does hit it, we have a little bit of flexibility, and it's 20% operational flexibility. But our goal is never hit that white area. So we'll walk through the chronology of what we did here. And we talked about the first thing we did is from 97 to 210 is drill new wells, Deerwood, Rhinauer, Briarwood water treatment plants. Quick as we can, we had our consultant, we did emergency POs. It was the years we had the fires. And we had the river crossing in 202. So then the cup was issued. So that's kind of an inflection point at that point in time. You can look, we were using 87 million gallons of water were coming from the wells in South Grid. Right now we're at 50. So we have assets and the ability to produce 87, but for long-term sustainability, we only use 50 as we speak. It's important criteria, that's the dark blue there. And then we had the post-river crossing cup limit in 2014. And that's with the Greenland plant went online, and we're at 50.23. And we have new wells, we mentioned already, in 16, 17, 18. That's kind of stair step, where you got the magenta stair step on the item number 4. And we also, Rivertown water treatment plant. It's only 2 MGD, not even, I think it's 1.8 decimals. But we're counting, it's our last plant we're going to build during this cup on the South Grid. And the rest has to get supplied from other sources. And then at the end, what we continue to do, we have the last big jump at number 6 is transmission capacity, both upstream of the Matthews Bridge and then downstream into Arlington to get more transmission capacity to use those wells and optimize it most efficiently. And then we have the 20% operational flexibility. And overall, you can look at how the blue changed from the inflection point of 2014 on the left to the blue on the right. And that's really the sustainability of the South Grid. We'll have to leverage future South Grid demand, growth and development, reclaim water, evaluate water purification, potential third river crossing, and other alternative water supplies. This is Mr. Hightower's slide. Water purification, One Water. One of the supply options that we're looking at is really a marquee project that we started here about 6 months ago. Full support from the district. Actually came with $900,000 of the $2.3 million R&D phase. And we're building basically a benchmark test. I haven't seen the trailer yet. We're going to have a trailer with pipes on it to take water from Buttman. One day we'll be able to drink it. The water from Buttman, wastewater treatment. We could choose whether or not at the time. We'll make decisions, but we'll be able to drink if we choose to. And we're going to look for about 2 years. We're going to select the process. We're probably 6 months into that process right now. We're going to do it Buttman and Southwest, and then we're going to build a plant, make a decision, and we're planning at this point in time that we believe we'll build a 1 MGD plant, learn the processes, look for 3, 4, 5 years, determine at that point in time, in 5 or 6 years or half a year into it, do we go forward on a more commercial phase to build water purification, either direct use, which only 2 people in the country really have done that in Texas, or indirect potable use where you inject it into the aquifer and groundwater. There's about 10 places in California, Arizona doing that as we speak. Or look at our supply alternatives. So we'll make that decision 4 or 5 years from now on which path we go. And really in summary, we want to manage the aquifer, withdrawal limit to most effectively sustain the water supply and water quality. while meeting the water demand in the growing Northeast Florida region and JEA service area. Our action plans are short-term new wells, pipelines, storage tanks, conservation messaging. Midterm, further develop this comprehensive plan. Someone will name it. It's not going to be me. I know someone's going to name that comprehensive plan. Further expanding the resource portfolio. Slide before we talked about it. Midterm initiatives. We'll look at the communication plan, FY18 comprehensive plan. Demand side management programs we'll expand on. Consider the third river crossing and other supply sources. We have 2 slides at the end, a supplemental that has more detail, that short-term, midterm, and long-term. And we're really, long-term is increase water supply as we can and reduce per capita demand. We'll always continue to do that. Recommendations for information, no board action direct today. We'll continue to prepare an annual resource master plan that big. That really does look at your 10, 20, 30-year plans every year. We'll implement the short-term, midterm actions and further develop this long-term actions. Hope gave a good overview. I took 5 more minutes than I was
You
supposed
can
to.
inhale now, Brian.
It's been tough. I can, but we learned it's 365, 7 by 24 here in the water sewer business, so I can inhale for about half an hour. And I hope it doesn't rain tonight, and then you want to rain a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. That's like drinking from a 36-inch main. I appreciate
I'm sorry.
all the information.
But I hope this report stands for a long time. That gives us a good backdrop when we go into more details of any items.
Mr. Cumber, any questions?
Hope that was a water line and not
Water
sewer
line.
It's all going to be one water before it's over, Mr. Cumber.
So, have we thought about, we had this long discussion about this pilot for dynamic pricing on the electric side. Have we thought about, as part of managing water use, at looking at dynamic pricing on the water sewer side? And specifically, what I'm thinking about is, you have no insight as to, like, if you ask me how many gallons of water I use a day at home, I have zero idea. And to me, it's analogous to how many megabytes or gigabytes of data is going through my phone. And unless I opt in to get a text that says if you're going over your limit, you're going to get charged another $10 for the next, whatever amount you're going to use, you really don't throttle down your use. And I think the challenge that we have, that I pose to you and the team, is people want to be smart. People want to use water in a not waste it. But if you have no insight and there is no dynamic pricing around it, where if you go over a certain threshold, which at some point I think there is a line of overuse versus normal use, you're not going to change people's behavior. So you can educate them as much as they want, but if they have no insight as to what they're using and what they're consuming, educating me isn't going to change my behavior. And I think that's the challenge for you and the team, is to give customers the insight as to what they are actually using. And then, we had at the last meeting, I think Carrie mentioned that we've got a significant amount of cell phones for our customers, right? So it's not, and the email addresses. So it's not like we don't have the ability to push out the notification and saying, here's where you are from a use standpoint. And then you're giving the power to the customer to make that behavior change. But right now, I think the challenge is we're hoping there's a behavior change, but there's a disconnect between the data we're giving the customer in order to make that behavioral change.
Yes. Good point. I think that right now we're dynamic pricing. It's a delayed response. They get the bill 30, 40 days later. They realize, wait a minute, I watered my yard more than I should, or used too much in the showers. And I think what you're suggesting is something more real time to help us shave off that peak, those little gray lines, so we don't have the peaks there. And I think it's a
and
good
I'm going a
point.
step further, Brian, because as you move people to electronic billing and auto pay, right, your challenge is, and look, I have no idea what my use is, right? Because now I get my bill, I know it's automatically getting paid. Maybe I peek at it here and there, but I don't study it, right? People studied their bill when you got it in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was paper, you actually looked at it and you read it. Now when you get it electronically, you don't spend as much time actually analyzing your bill. And that is a total non-scientific statement I just made, but I'm going to go with that intuitive
I'm with you.
statement that people don't download their bill and look at it. And under that assumption, you might be putting data in people's hands, but you're not putting it in their hands in a way that's meaningful to change that behavior.
Especially a new generation that loves everything electronic.
Yeah.
Excellent point. Anything else,
Listen on.
Mr. Cumber? Ms.
No, but I'd
Flanagan?
love to just, as you think it through, like to come back to us with a plan of, as part of the overall plan as to how we, how we address that reality of how consumers want their information on this stuff.
Paul, 20 seconds. The water sewer automatic meter reading is not quite as advanced electronic as electric, in the sense that the meters, we have automatic meter reading, but they are underground pits. They do need batteries, where electric meters have electricity serving to them, so the industry trails a little bit on electric on everything related to metering. Is that a fair statement? Or is it a
Yeah,
little more
I think
challenge?
one of the other issues in terms of there are two things in terms of sense of urgency. The rate structure in water sewer was intentionally, when we redid it back in the mid-00s, was more heavily weighted towards the fixed charge, increasing fixed revenue. So we've got 45-ish% of our revenue is a fixed charge with 55 variable. That's very different than the electric system. We've got that very small component of fixed. And so the demand, certainly getting it right in electric was important for us. The capacity issue on water, the real trigger is irrigation. I mean, it's not so much internal use. It's really the irrigation, because when you really look at these levels, and we're trying to hone in right now using some of the same technologies and information that you pointed out, Mr. Cumber, and you're precisely right. The base for internal use is about 92 million gallons a day, but when we start to spike up to almost 200 million gallons, that's just St. Augustine grass. Mm-hmm. And in today's world, it's St. Augustine grass 3 and 4 times a week, which is 1 and 2 times too many. So the pricing signal might be a little quicker, and it might be easier actually to apply a tax, because we know those folks.
You water
who
your
are
yard, it's
irrigation.
Yeah.
$15 today.
Yeah, so it's, we will take that.
Good points. Ms. Flanagan?
Just a brief one. On slide 16, can you help confirm how I'm interpreting the red line? The solid red line has been historical actual demand and use.
Mm-hmm.
The dotted red line is projection.
Projection.
Can you help bridge for me the trajectory of what was happening between like 2015 and 17 actual to what we're forecasting for the future?
Yes, I'll go back 2 or 3 slides to help on that. I never do Bill's slides. It's a lot to do with the weather. In 2016 and 15, 2016 you had a lot of low rainfall, 31.4 inches. The average is 50, 52, 53. The district put a water drought, even announced something last week, even though we've seen the rain the last 6, 7 weeks, still in a drought period. So we had a lot of weather-driven increase the last 3 years. I know Melissa's reporting the financial statements of that. We're at 4.7% year-to-date right now, higher than last year. 2 months ago, we were closer to 10%. So I think the weather had a lot to do with that. And then the economy coming back, we have growth for 2.5% of our customers. So you got that, the weather, and then probably, like Mr. Cumber saying, people who got a little bit not getting information as quick as they need to respond on the pricing. So I think a combination of 3 things. That helps.
Thank you. Mr. Petway?
Yeah, just to comment, Brian, I'm impressed. It's a great report, and you've done a great job. I've been around since these individual water and sewer plants were owned by individuals, and we put a lot of cats and dogs together to come up with what you see here this morning. What was the time frame on the consolidation of all that?
I'd say it was probably 99 to 04 was when we, United Water, Todd Mackey's here, he's number 36612. We bought 36,612 accounts from United Water, and Todd came with that.
Yeah.
So he's 13. That was 201. December 28th, 2001. That's the big one.
Yeah, so it's been a long
And then
time.
you have Florida Water right afterwards, St. Joe's, Regency.
There were 13 total, I think. 13,
Yeah,
14,
and then
16.
before that, the Public
Yeah.
Utilities Department bought like the Ortigas and the smaller ones in the mid-90s, early 90s.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you and your team. How many people are there in the water business here?
Right at 500, 350 in operations. Daryl Calhoun is responsible for the treatment of pump stations, about 200 people. And Mike Jones, newer at the pipes, about 150. And then we got Renetta Marshall, Tom Mackey, and Carol Moore, the engineering and planning and GIS, and they got about 100 there. And they're responsible for the $1 billion capital program in the next 5 years. And then, of course, we got a lot of support throughout the company.
Very good. Thank
Thank
you,
you, Mr.
Chairman.
Bella. Reverend Newbill. A couple of quick ones, Brian, because I know our time is short. You made reference to the July 26 Times Union article that cited JEA for having twice as high of the trihalomethanes content in our water supply. Can you comment on that? Why ours is twice as high as the Florida utility average?
You know, you have to look at the time frame, and I thought that the supplemental had it. The requirement of, it's the second bullet underneath the blue one, is 80 milligrams per liter, or 80, that's 80 parts per billion, excuse me. And they might have picked one specific sample. We make sure that it's 4 months, it's 4 quarterly reports. I don't think they picked a specific sample. Also, we know that overall report, it compares other utilities that are maybe 1/50th of our size and say that maybe we had an exceedance on one element, but if we're 50, 100 times bigger, I don't think it's comparing proportion. And we make sure that we're under limit. We have not ever been over that running average limit at a point. You could take a point in time and get a sample, but the sample methodology, you take it again, next quarter, next quarter, next quarter.
So you really think it's a methodology issue?
Yes, methodology, or you always a point in time sampling.
Got it. Going back to Mr. Cumber's point, I'd ask you and Carrie to consider, right now I believe we have an opt-in method of communication on most of our electronic communications. To the extent that we look at dynamic pricing or educating our consumers on their use, and maybe we should reconsider a push with an opt-out so that people are getting alerts. I know a lot of people, myself included, find alerts intrusive, but I turn them off if I don't like them. And that might be something that people would find valuable. So I just ask that staff consider that. Anything else before we excuse Mr. Roche? A comprehensive report.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Ms. Dykes. Welcome.
Set up quite the tough act to follow.
I'm Rose.
Good afternoon. We're continuing in the theme of water and wastewater behind tab 3B3. This item is a recommendation to call a public hearing to modify the water and sewer rate document at the September Board of Directors meeting. So what I'll do is just provide an overview of what we're proposing to change in the tariff and then take any questions. The tariff change that we're recommending relates to the treatment of leachate. As part of JEA's wastewater treatment services, we offer treatment of leachate from the city's 2 major landfills. And leachate, as I'm sure you know, is when it rains on top of a landfill, water percolates through that landfill and gets all the way to the bottom, and there's moisture that's created as a result of the decomposition of the garbage in the landfill, and all of that nasty stuff ends up in the bottom of the landfill and is taken out and actually trucked to our wastewater treatment facility for treatment. What comes out is really highly concentrated in terms of the layperson's description, the bad stuff we get out of wastewater. And therefore it's expensive to treat. A couple of decades ago, the city and JEA entered into an agreement that was essentially an exchange agreement. So the agreement was we would treat the leachate coming out of the landfills for the city of Jacksonville, and in exchange for that, they would take the solids that were produced by the wastewater treatment process and accept those into their landfill. And the only charge was essentially the net of those two expenses. We since have changed our wastewater treatment process. So we actually take those solids that are produced by the wastewater treatment process and we beneficially reuse them. We treat them further and sell them into the market. And so we don't have anything we're landfilling anymore. The last time we did a comprehensive cost of service study in the water and sewer system was in 2013, and leachate was identified in that study as one of the areas we are under collecting. And really as a result of that, the old agreement that hadn't been revisited since the changes in our process. Because it was identified in that cost of service study, and because we're required to collect revenue based on our our actual cost to provide service, we then launched a study to actually look at the cost of providing leachate treatment service, and that study started in 2014. Our full cost to treat leachate is about $2 million a year. That compares to our current collections of less than $100,000 a year, so there's a pretty big delta there. That includes both the marginal cost of treatment, which is the direct costs, the electricity, the chemicals, the staff time, et cetera, and also the capital recovery portion. The split's about half and half between those two. So it's about half direct marginal costs and about half capital recovery. At this time, what we're doing at Buckman is we're relooking at the whole wastewater treatment process at Buckman to try to make a decision over the next year or two about whether we're going to continue with capital investments in the UV treatment system at Buckman, or whether we're going to shift to something that's more hypochlorite-based from a treatment perspective. And that decision will pretty fundamentally change the cost structure, especially the capital recovery portion of the cost structure for leachate treatment at Buckman. And so to build a bridge between where we are today, where we've got this cost of service study that indicates a significant undercollection, and the uncertainty that we're facing over the next year or two, what we're recommending the board consider at this time is essentially a two-step process. So we take the leachate, continue to treat it, we adjust rates today to get to that marginal cost recovery. So we're at least covering the direct costs of treating that leachate, and that'll get us about halfway there in terms of the cost of service. And then once the decision is made on which set of capital investments are going to be needed to pursue the treatment option that's going to be most beneficial to us at Buckman, then we come back and revisit the capital recovery portion of the cost of service. And so this recommendation today just addresses that step one of the process. It would increase the leachate treatment service charge to $5.16 per 100 gallons of leachate that are brought to Buckman. And again, we would bring that phase two after we made the capital decision at Buckman in terms of treatment. The item today is presented to the board for action. The action is just to call the hearing for next month. We have been working in lockstep with the administration since this was identified as an issue in 2013. And we've gone down many different paths because when you're facing a $2 million difference in collections, it creates the opportunity to really explore different options. And so some of them are pretty creative, and ultimately I think where we landed is the city is going to have us continue to treat their leachate at our wastewater treatment facility. And they're prepared for that through their fiscal year 2018 budget process. And so I'll pause there and just ask if there's any questions about the call for the rate hearing.
Mr. Cumber, Ms. Flanagan, Mr. Petway, Reverend Newbill. If not, the chair will entertain a motion to call a public hearing to modify the water and sewer rate tariff for our September 19, 2017 meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cumber. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Reverend Newbill. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're still on the clock for the monthly operational and financial review.
I am. I'll just quickly review the information that's found behind tab 3B4 in your books this afternoon. And many of these things Brian actually touched on during his presentation. So
Well, you can skip those.
I'll hit just the high points and keep it short. In fact, I'll give you back Brian's time. I'll start with safety. We are behind goal in terms of safety in our recordable incident rate for this fiscal year. We had a very good July. We had 0 recordable incidents in July, and hopefully we can continue that performance through the end of the fiscal year, but we still had 31 recordable injuries throughout the fiscal year, which is far more than our goal. And in fact, our goal throughout the organization is to have 0. We want everybody to go home as safely and as well as they came into work in the morning. Skipping down to the other red button on this page, sanitary sewer overflows, we are tracking higher than our goal year to date in terms of SSOs. Just for context, I think it's worthwhile to remember that we've got today about a third as many, maybe half as many as we had 2 decades ago in terms of sanitary sewer overflows in the system, in spite of having a system that's twice as big. So I think that does show that some of the continuous improvement efforts that we have underway are working, but we're behind in terms of goal. We've had weather events that impact the system. But for every SSO that happens in the system, there's a root cause analysis that's performed so that we can continue to get to work that number of SSOs down in the system. On the electric side, in the scorecard, we've talked about safety. Our sales forecast We've touched on in a financial context, our sales are coming in substantially lower than last year. In fact, our forecast for this year is to end up at about 12 million megawatt hours versus 12.6 for last year. You'll notice a red on electric outage duration. That's really a function of how busy the storm season has been. With the afternoon thunderstorms in particular, that's created an uptick there. We still compare very favorably to others in the industry, but we are behind target in terms of outage duration. Under generating plant performance, the fleet reliability is running a little behind our target for this year. The 2.47 that's there is top quartile in terms of E4 for the industry, but it does reflect a number of issues that came up, particularly in the month of June among the generating fleet. July was a much better month in terms of E4. And then environmental compliance, there were 6 exceedances that are noted there. None of those are air related. Those are all essentially small fluid releases that happened on site. All of them were at Northside. All of them were individually contained and cleaned up, but each of them was reportable because of the nature of the fluid that was released. In customer experience, the one red button that you'll see on the customer experience scorecard relates to business customer satisfaction. I think we're pretty proud of having landed at number 12 out of 86 in the country, but we set a very aggressive goal for ourselves, and we did not meet that goal for this year. We just missed it. On the bottom portion of this page, you'll see the number of solar connections that we have versus our limit under our net metering policy. Our total aggregate installed capacity under the net metering policy limit is 8.2 megawatts, so we are trending up toward that 10 megawatt limit. We do plan to discuss our comprehensive solar strategy with the board over the next coming months. And finally, to wrap up with financial results, the only yellow button that you'll see on this page relates to revenue in the electric system, which is running behind because purely as a function of sales. I'll note our non-fuel cost per megawatt hour, which is about 2/3 of the way down on the left-hand side, has changed from last month. We were yellow, this month we're green, and that's really a function of expense discipline along with a slight uptick in electric sales that have helped us trend toward achieving that goal for this year. Any questions on any of the scorecard?
Any questions? No? Thank you, Ms. Dykes.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is open discussion. Due to Florida's robust sunshine laws, the members of the board of directors do not have an opportunity to speak privately concerning business of JEA, so we open the floor for any discussion among the board members. Mr. Betway, revenue bill? Ms. Flanagan, Mr. Cumber? Ms. Kessler, anything to bring? Mr. Petway?
I have a question of someone.
Please.
We talked about the PSC, I think, openings, and I saw something about it in the paper, and I hadn't heard anything lately. Does anybody know anything about what's going on there? Two or three openings on the PSC, maybe?
I think there were two that I read in the article that,
There are applications that have gone in, but that's where it stands.
okay. So doing interviews now, in the process of interviews?
We have a friend interested in being reappointed, I understand.
Yes, yes.
Art Graham.
Art Graham has
Talked to him,
applied,
he has applied for reappointment.
We
Thank
support
you.
his reappointment. Any other questions, comments? Any new business? Mr. McElroy.
Mr. Chairman, I have one item that came up really in the last 24 hours and is related to the work that we're doing on the comprehensive solar strategy. I would ask the board's consideration to expand the last item in terms of calling for a rate hearing. The action the board took called for a rate hearing for the water sewer tariff, but to also call a rate hearing for the electric system rate tariff, specifically to address expanding the Solar Smart program for large commercial customers. If you recall, we provide our customers the opportunity to buy a certain portion of their electricity from our solar farms in exchange for a different fuel rate. This program is targeted at large commercial customers, which is important for our economic development as well as large customers are looking into this would have the opportunity to buy into our new solar farms, and shall we go forward with our solar strategy in terms of significantly investing the solar, provide them an opportunity to share in those benefits as well. So the request would be, and I apologize to the board, it really came up in the last 24 hours in finalizing this work, that we also open up and call for a rate hearing for the electric system. And the reason there is specifically for the solar smart expansion.
Thank you, Mr. McElroy. The chair will entertain a motion to call a public hearing for a tariff on the Solar Smart program for large commercial customers at our September 19 board meeting.
And it would be just probably the electric system tariff, because it's a subset of that.
That's the motion I'm asking for.
So moved.
Reverend Newbill, thank you. Mr. Cumber, second. Any discussion? I suppose we'll get more details next month.
Yes, we will.
Okay.
It's all good.
Yeah, good. No discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passed. Old business, I only mentioned that I'm informed by Ms. Brooks that the land swap with the city contracts are progressing. We don't have a definitive purchase agreement signed yet, but drafts being exchanged. Right. Any questions on that? Any other old business? No. Committee reports. Finance and Audit Committee, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr.
No,
Chair.
I'm kidding. Take all the time you need.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief update. Finance and Audit Committee did meet last week. Amongst our agenda items, we reviewed the minutes from our prior meeting in May. We took a review of the annual internal audit plan. We reviewed the audit services charter, with which I will note there is no change over prior year. We reviewed the quarterly ERM and audit update. We received a presentation from our ethics officer's quarterly report. We met with Ernst & Young for the FY 2017 annual financial audit plan. We took an electric system and water and sewer system reserve fund quality quarterly report. We had discussion and presentation around the JEA commercial natural gas sales. Received an update from management on Plant Vogel, and went through the JEA Energy Market Risk Management Policy Report. Of those items, there are 4 that the Finance and Audit Committee brings forward to the full board with the recommendation for approval, and that's around the meeting minutes from the prior May 8th meeting, approval of the annual internal audit plan, approval of the annual audit services charter, and E&Y's annual financial audit plan.
It sounds like your meeting was almost as robust as this one. Does the board typically approve the committee minutes?
They're being asked to come to the full board because there was not a quorum present at the committee level, so it was discharged to the full board for approval. But in typical course, if there was a quorum present, this board as a whole would not be approving.
Fair enough. So first action item from Ms. Flanagan is approval of the Finance and Audit Committee meeting minutes of May 8th, 2017. Do I hear a motion?
Move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Petway. Second from Ms. Kessler. Is there any question about those minutes? Any discussion? Any changes? All approve, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Passes unanimously. Second action item, I suppose, is the approval of the annual internal audit plan. Yes? Chair will entertain a motion for approval.
Move approval.
Thank you for the motion, Mr. Petway. Second, Ms. Flanagan. Any discussion or questions on the internal audit plan? No discussions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Passes unanimously. The third item was approval of the audit services charter. May I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cumber. Second, Ms. Kessler. Any questions or discussions regarding the audit services charter? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion passes. And then the final is the E&Y fiscal year 2000 annual financial audit plan.
2017.
17, sorry. Motion for approval.
Move approval.
Thank you, Reverend Newbill. Second from Mr. Petway. Any questions regarding the annual financial audit plan? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Flanagan. Anything else from Finance and Audit?
Aside from that, our next meeting is on the 5th of December.
Thank you. Mr. McElroy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several things in my report. We do have our budget hearing in front of the Finance Committee of the City Council on Friday morning at 9 o'clock. We will be presenting the budget that you approved in June. We have reconciled it with the council auditor. We are bringing a budget without any exceptions and fully reconciled to the council auditor. So it should be short and sweet with respect to the conversation on the finance side. We are also bringing information regarding our Jacksonville Small and Emerging Business Program and its results and several modifications we are making in connection with feedback that we've received from a number of council members. We will be sharing our workforce demographics and plans and progress that we've made over the last number of years and plan to continue to make, and also some programs for customers in need. This is sort of a little different in the past, a more comprehensive presentation really of the business review focused on JSEB workforce and programs for customers in need. We are, as I mentioned earlier, and I thank the board for approving the call for the rate hearing next month on solar, working on continue to work on a comprehensive solar strategy. It is three components. One, large-scale economic development of solar electric generating capabilities within the county. The market is currently very favorable towards this, and we are receiving a good bit of input from the marketplace that has lowered costs very substantially at or below our fuel rate. So we think there's an opportune time here to bring forward over the next short period of time to the board an approval of a purchase power that will help us hedge our fuel cost and hedge our overall costs. We'll continue to work on that. And I may ask, actually, and work with the chair, possibly even a half hour or 45-minute workshop before, at the beginning of the next board meeting, and then we'll go into the board meeting in detail to share that. We're continuing to look at refining our Solar Smart program and expanding that for large customers, and also finally repositioning or net metering. And September is sort of the date we're targeting for bringing these items to the board. The financial results continue to produce favorable trends, as Ms. Dykes reported, and looks as though it will provide us some year-end opportunities to continue or further our debt reduction goals and objectives. So that's a positive. And I would say that September is to be a busy month too. We will have in hand the report, and it's the third step in the review from Hurricane Matthew, specifically tied to the review of the water and wastewater system. And this is the review, the FDEP consultant that we hired engaged to do an independent study of our sewer capacity management and operations and maintenance assessment. And that we want to bring that forward to the board and the community, and preliminary indications are it will be a good report. And then finally, August 26th, we will be recognizing as Florida Line Worker Appreciation Day, and we plan to do a couple things for the linemen in each one of the work centers the week before. That's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. As a loyal Twitter follower of JEA, I have a question. Do our linemen really practice throwing a football back and forth?
Yes, they do.
Incredible. I understand that since our last meeting, you guys see the JEA Twitter feed, you know what I'm talking about. I understand that since our last meeting, Santee Cooper has exercised its right to terminate construction of its nuclear power plant, also with Westinghouse. Can you give the board a brief update on the current discussions on Plant Vogtle and where Southern Company is, PSC schedule and timeline?
Yes, and that's accurate that Santee, and then followed immediately by SCANA, decided to abandon the nuclear project, which is a mirror project to Vogtle. It's in South Carolina. and close up shop. And so they're going forward with the abandonment and plan. On the other side, with Southern Company, we're still moving forward. The construction is still going forward. It appears, at least the reporting out, is that productivity's picked up in the last 60 days, 60, 90 days on the site. The calendar of events is for a filing with the Georgia Public Service Commission by Georgia Power for the new revised cost budget and time schedule on August 31st, I believe. It's between the 30th and the 31st. And that will be a standard filing every 6 months. Georgia Power's got to go to the commission to make the filing. The commission will then set up a calendar of events for hearings and for opportunities for intervention and testimony that will be taken over the next roughly 60 days before determination's met. That doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be a go, no-go at that time. Georgia Power will have to come back to the commission and file as an outcome of that, this next filing, a request for additional cost recovery, which could be in the latter part of the year.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. McElroy on his report? Mr. Petway?
I feel like I'm in the White House press briefing. I have 3 questions, Mr. McElroy.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I'd just like a brief update on the next hurricane. Are we prepared for the next hurricane,
We
Mr.
are
McElroy?
prepared for the next hurricane, and we're deeply concerned in looking out at the forecast. And so, but we are prepared. We went through our exercises. We have basically, at this point in time, I think there were a few remaining. We had sort of 100 items, starting from very small to significant in terms of changes in lessons learned from the last storm. 98% of those have been implemented, so we're ready to go with those. We did our storm exercise. We've got communications on the ground. I just finished up, and really Ted and Hobson and Mike Prost and their team put together and worked with collaboration of all the electric utilities in the state, and we have signed on new mutual aid agreements. We have a compact in place and agreements with all the other utilities now for mutual aid to help one another in the event of a storm. That was a big deal. That had been sitting in a file since the 80s. So for all the utilities to come together, we had a big meeting a couple weeks ago in Orlando and a workshop, and everybody committed to help everyone. So I think we're prepared at the state level as well. But we're watching it closely, and we will keep the board informed as storms do approach.
Number 2.
Pension reform, could you give us an update on that and a little update on our building, what's going on in the building?
Pension reform, in terms of, we're coming down to the wire here at the end of the fiscal year. September 30th will be the last day of any new employee that is qualified for the current plan, and October 1st, we're set to roll out the new plan, defined contribution, and all new employees hired thereafter will come under that plan. So we're changing all of the infrastructure, and HR has been on top of that, and the system changes. And the building, we're right now in terms of trying to get the final contract language agreed upon, and we'll, as a result of this, Jody and I will make a couple calls and see if we can get that out of the Office of General Counsel. Seems to be bouncing around over there.
Anything
We
else,
have a
Mr.
lawyer, the chairman, he might help.
Yeah. Yes. I don't think I can help there. Any other questions
No,
on
sir.
Mr. McElroy's report? Reverend Newbill? Hussein?
Just one thing. So, maybe this should have come up in open discussion, but I wanted to give Mr. McElroy an opportunity to talk about Plan Vogel. So, and maybe this is a recommendation for you, Mr. Chair. So, I kind of feel personally that Plan Vogel, we've kind of been getting updates, last couple of years. Obviously, things aren't improving, they're getting worse. At some point, there's a risk that this could have a significant effect on JEA. What I don't have the clarity on, and Paul and I talked about this a little bit earlier in the week, is what the specific triggers are where we as a board will have to make a decision on on whether or not we move forward with Plant Vogel. The timing of those potential triggers, we obviously don't want to miss any of them if we want to have a serious and robust conversation as to whether or not we stay in the deal. I kind of see it as, I know it's easier probably to lay this chart out than to fill the blanks out in it, but there's a certain number of megawatts we need as a utility. The Plant Vogel was going to fill some of that megawatt need. If we decide to move forward, there's the debt that we would pay for it. There's the potential increase in costs that are associated with that. If we decide not to move forward, there's still a debt commitment that we have as part of the arrangement with Plant Vogel, but then there's, the CapEx that's needed for replacement, whether it's a natural gas combined cycle plant or a purchase agreement. But I would like sooner rather than later for us to be able to get a really comprehensive understanding on the economics around this, what the potential impacts are to our balance sheet, to our cash flows, and then specifically what those triggers are as to when we have to make certain decisions if we decide to move forward or not move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Cumber. I'll take that as a recommendation to ask staff that they report back on financial impacts and decision timeline at our September board meeting. There is in the Finance and Audit Committee report a summary update, but it does not specifically address those metrics.
Correct. We talked about it at the Finance and Audit meeting, but this, I think, this requires a board-level discussion on how we want to move forward with this project.
I couldn't agree more, Mr. Cumber. As originally projected, it would have supplied 13% of our energy needs by 2020, and the impact financially is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. It is a significant issue for JEA. So we'll ask staff to report back on those two items in September board meeting.
We can do that.
Great. Ms. Flanning? Okay. Well, before we adjourn, I just want to say thank you to Mr. McElroy for that report, to the staff. It's been a very eventful and informative meeting. I appreciate the time and commitment of each and every one of my fellow board members here, and you, Ms. Kessler, taking time from your holiday to spend with us. The thoughtful consideration of the very serious issues that face us, the good questions. I appreciate you taking your responsibilities to this board and our community seriously. So thank you, and with that, we're adjourned.